Ephesians chapter 5, verse 16. Redeeming the time, because the days are evil. And for an individual study this morning, at the end of this year, there can be no more appropriate text, a text so often preached at year's end and year's beginning. The Apostles' great exhortation, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Our subject is buying up time. This is a remarkable word, redeeming the time, a precious and a special word to believers, a word so full of meaning was Christ who redeemed us and purchased us from spiritual bondage and slavery and set us free, taking himself the punishment of sin, living himself a life of perfect righteousness to deserve heaven for us all. Redeeming. And yet I note that maybe 50% of modern translations scrap it and just cast it aside and translate the phrase something like this, taking every opportunity. They regard it simply as a figure of speech. What's the modern equivalent, they ask? Take every opportunity. And so the redeeming word of all words is passed over. And the apostle uses it intentionally. The sense of the Greek word translated redeeming is this is the verb to buy up or to buy back. In the case of a slave, to buy out a slave from slavery. So buy up, buy back, get back, and pay for it, the time. And there is a reason why the Apostle Paul uses this special word, usually restricted to the redemption through Christ, because it is the sense he wants. Buy back the time. And that's what we shall be thinking of briefly this morning. Redeeming the time, because the days are evil. We need to look at the context a little just to introduce the subject. Because the days are evil. There is a warfare on, and that is what the apostle is addressing in this 5th chapter. You look down to verse 3. Fornication and all uncleanness or covetousness. Why covetousness? Included with fornication and uncleanness, because it is so bad. Covetousness is to make a god out of things that you desire, things that are more expensive than you need, or more attractive than you need, because you must revel in them and glory in them and have them. It's a form of worship. So it's classed with fornication. But fornication and all uncleanness or covetousness, and listen to this, you won't find this anywhere else in the New Testament. Let it not be once named among you. Are there some sins that are more avoidable than others? Yes. Sins of uncleanness, fornication, uncleanness. For a Christian believer, it is an appalling thing to fall into uncleanness. The apostle doesn't set that standard for all sin, though all sin is sin. Let it not be once named among you, because it indicates a great fall that precedes the sin, a fall from godliness and devotions and prayer, calling upon God to be so vulnerable to such sins. Anyway, this is the context of the redeeming word, fornication and so on. Verse 4, neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, and we take these words in the context of filthiness, uncleanness, sins of uncleanness, neither filthiness nor foolish talking nor jesting in that subject area, which are not convenient, highly inappropriate, but rather thankfulness, giving of thanks. Verse 3, still on the subject, verse 5 rather, for this ye know, that no whoremonger nor unclean person, nor covetous man brought in again, who is an idolater, hath any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God. Yet this is what is hurled at us every day through the media, through the advertisements, through the talk of people around us, through the television programs, that increasingly, the devil is crafty. He began by bringing in filthy programs and deeply suggestive programs, little by little, then more and more, until his ultimate objective is that almost everything will be tainted with it, so that it is almost impossible for Christians to exist without being cunningly affected, the whole world brought down progressively. When we read in the Bible about the great battle of the end times, Satan's little season, and a war, did you think that war would be fought with bows and arrows and lances and spears? That's just symbolic. No, we see the major weapons of the war of Satan are all the immorality permeating the entire media to corrupt and defile and bring down and to make the living of a Christian life almost impossible if you're exposed to it and if you succumb to it. So we're in a warfare. We have to be sensible. Verse 6, let no man deceive you with vain words, for because of these things cometh the wrath of God upon the children of disobedience. Be not ye therefore partakers with them. More and more, Satan wants us to be interwoven with the world. And there are some churches that actually advocate this. And they say they're Bible churches. And they say, we've got to be culturally relevant and involve and go to the movies and be able to talk about all these things with people. We've got to be in society and in the culture. What a foolish, foolish thing to renounce your position in the war and actually put down your arms and go in among the enemy, naively and foolishly, completely contrary to all the exhortation of Scripture. Ye were, verse 8, sometimes darkness, but now are ye light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of the Spirit, any usefulness, any godliness, any instrumentality and witness, depends on this. Verse 9, for the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and truth. It's in that context, proving what is acceptable unto the Lord. And Paul repeating himself, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. And, well, we could look at context, look down here at some of these verses. Verse 14, wherefore he saith, awake, thou that sleepest. This is to Christians. We could be asleep when it comes to time and the use of time. Asleep, just letting things happen. Awake, thou that sleepest, arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. And this wonderful exhortation of verse 15, see then, see to it, that ye walk circumspectly. The word circumspectly translates the Greek compound, which means looking all around. See that you walk looking all around you, like a soldier advancing into, well, he knows not what. There could be enemies lurking in the trees anywhere, and he's peering all around as he advances. And that is to be the stance of the Christian. See then that ye walk circumspectly, looking in all directions. Where is the next temptation coming from? The next allurement, the next contaminating influence that we need to be warned against. That's the context of redeeming the time, buying back the time, because the days are evil. Well, we are at a year's end, and time just moves so rapidly. As Watt says, time like an ever-rolling stream. Or the hymn that we've just sung with those remarkable words of Wesley, our life is a dream, our time as a stream glides swiftly away, and the fugitive moment refuses to stay. Every moment soon gone, never to be retrieved, never to be had again. Times of life where God gave you possibilities and opportunities to serve him and be effective for him, and maybe you dreamed through them, and they've gone, and you never recovered that. What a shame. It's past. The opportunity has gone. Redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Says Moses, so teach us to number our days. Well, let's divide this up. Redeeming the time. First of all, then, a price must be paid. This is costly. Christ has come from glory. He's entered into time. He's redeemed us by paying a great price. He suffered and died on Calvary so that he can purge away our sin. He's paid the price for them so that he can open the door of heaven for us, give us eternal life, even now, transform us and bless us, and be our God and our guide, and take us to eternal glory. He has paid a great price. Now he gives to us a far smaller price to pay. We're saved by grace alone. Nothing that we do can contribute to that salvation. Only Christ could earn that for us. But we're given a task of voluntarily paying day by day to buy time, to buy it back. And it costs a price to be paid. You're going to have to sacrifice, you and I, in this coming year, in order to secure the time. Sacrifice some things we like doing. Sacrifice the excess time we may spend doing nothing or in leisure. Very pleasant. We have to sacrifice it, perhaps. We have to forego certain things in order to buy back that time for the Master's use, for spiritual purposes, for worship, for devotion, for prayer, for witness, for Christian service and its preparation, for the family and the guidance of the family. We have to give time to better causes for the King of Kings. And that time has to be bought back by self-denial, foregoing things, surrendering things, sacrificing things. This is not about paying for salvation. Christ has paid for that, and only he can. This is a far smaller task. But we have to buy back the time. Identify the time-wasting areas the unnecessary areas, and make that foregoing sacrifice and claim that time for better things. A price must be paid. Then the price is paid in mortifying, biblical word, putting to death. Putting to death murmuring. Murmuring seems to have been the great problem of the children of Israel in the wilderness in the Old Testament. Almost every major step that had to be taken, the people are seen murmuring. They're discontented, foolish discontent, discontented over small hardships when they're getting tremendous blessings and benefits and deliverances. But murmuring comes back in the Christian life. How much time do you and I spend murmuring, discontented, going over things that shouldn't have happened or shouldn't be happening to us, or that we think or imagine are unreasonable or whatever? Well, to buy back the time, you've got to forego some of the murmuring, if not all the murmuring. It takes so much time and energy away from you. It takes your praises away from God and your thankfulness. It takes your happiness away so that you're a misery in the family and so on. We have to buy back the time, surrender, deny ourselves the murmuring, and apply it to much better thinking and spiritual reflection and thinking. Certainly mortify, put to death the gossip and such things, and times of envy and times of indolence, just nothingness, indolence, time wasted. We have to be savage with the television. So much is just of this world and contaminating. You've got to be so discerning. There was a time when many Christians wouldn't have television. That seems to have gone pretty well out of fashion among Christians, but you've certainly got to be very much more discerning and get rid of those soaps and those entertainment programs which are 70% pollution and weakening to you. And they are planned by Satan to get you thinking and reacting and reasoning the world's way, conditioning you cunningly. You have to forgo them. Then you've got time for wonderful things. And phones, the scourge of the phone, to all ages, but particularly to the young. The addiction to the phone. Why sacrifice and mortifying, and how much time you will create. You start to live a life for the Lord, a life of thought and reflection and noticing things and doing things for Him and witness and reading. There's so little reading done today. Our Tabernacle Christian bookshop now sells only a fraction of the books that it used to, and that goes for all Christian bookshops and most secular bookshops too. There's been such a reduction in reading. Not reading good things. Christian people know no doctrine. Christian people know no biography of the great saints of the past. Christian people do not see their Christian lives in the context of the whole of God's dealings with us over the centuries. Christian people and young people are so ignorant and know nothing because of these devices, just disgorging rubbish 90% of the time, and tittle-tattle and nonsense. See, some sacrifice, some payment made to forego, and the time and the mental energy and alertness and depth that is to be gained. These things are obvious to us. Redeeming the time It's all encompassed by that wonderful word. And then we need, in buying back the time, also to ask questions of everything we do. The questions of 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 12 and chapter 10, verse 23. The questions are, is it appropriate for me as a Christian? What do I plan to do this week, this year? Is it fitting for a Christian? Then the second question, is it edifying? Will it add to me or other Christians, or help, or build up the cause of Christ? Is it edifying? Does it cause us to grow? And then the third question of those two passages in 1 Corinthians 6 and 10, will I be brought under the power of it? Will I be hooked on something? Will it be like a drug to me? And I have to have more of it, and it consumes time. Those are the three questions we ask of everything, according to Paul in 1 Corinthians. Is it fitting? Is it edifying? Will I be brought under the power of it? And by this means, we buy back all that time that would have gone inappropriately on things that fall foul of those questions. Then what will we do with the purchased time? We create more time in this year. What will we do with it? Well, the kind of things we do as believers are things you could do anywhere. Or most of them are. You think of the Apostle Paul. On his missionary journeys, preaching, founding churches, personal ministry to countless people, so many things accomplished by him, and then suddenly he's on his first Roman imprisonment, and he can no longer preach. Has his life come to an end? Are the activities for which he may have been redeeming the time, are the activities useless to him now? No, they're certainly not. And God will use him. That first Roman prison ministry was tremendous. You've got Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, Philemon, the great prison letters, all written out of that first imprisonment. And Paul, in a sense, in that time in prison in Rome, did more, far more than he ever did on earth, because those letters, inspired by God, have been used for the guidance of millions of Christians in every day and age and land and nation ever since. All the things that matter, bar the preaching, God could do, what Paul could do while in prison. He could examine himself. He could review his life. He could pray. He could commit everything to the Lord. He could engage in a ministry of intercession. He doubtless had a list of people all the time for whom he interceded. Do we? Does the Lord lay on your heart 2 or 3, maybe 4 people for whom you regularly intercede? And then, of course, there were many other things he could do also. He would read the Old Testament scriptures. The epistles of Paul are full of allusions to the Old Testament scriptures. He was guided by the Spirit of God, but you can see his own deep knowledge. Do you read? If we were to ask, what is the book you're currently reading? How many friends here would not be able to answer? There is no current book. There is nothing currently being studied, pursued, no deeper learning process going on, no great spiritual illumination. You read the Word, yes, but so little, and nothing else. What a tragedy. But now you've bought back time. You can have ambitions. You can say, I'm going to go through a reading list. I'm going to read this and this and this. I'm going to, before God, be a deeper believer. I'm going to equip myself by doing these things to help others so that I know what to say when this friend is in trouble and that friend is in trouble. I know how to deal with my own temptations. I know where to go for comfort and consolation, for inspiration. When my zeal needs reawakening, are you going to have time to study, to read, to come under the sound of the word? Because we have liberty. Some people come to only one service a week. No Bible study. They're not under the constant comfort and challenge and instruction of the Word of God preached. What a lack. What's happening in our spiritual lives? You need to buy back, and then, having got the time, have a clear idea how you're going to spend it. Then Pastor Buss was speaking recently to us about good works. You've time for good works. Who should you be helping? What's come to your attention? What should you be doing? And so on. What's your record of good works in this last year? Oh, I haven't had time. What's your record with the children? How much time have fathers given to the encouragement of children? Oh, I didn't have time. Why not? Because there was no buying back of the time. So the apostle means these words, redeeming the time. Resent that time that slips away to useless things. And get it back, friends, before it's gone forever. And then plan what you're going to do with it and how you're going to spend it. Of course, it helps to form habits. There are some things, and there are some young people I think are in trouble with this, because the devil has come and whispered in their ear, oh, it's not a spiritual thing to have set times, set time for devotion, set time for reading the scripture, set times which nothing will sway you from. Of course it is. It's a lifeline. It's wonderfully helpful to have certain set times, morning or evening, that are always for this and always for this. It keeps us in the pathway. It's deeply enriching. You need to be, in some things, creatures of habits. And to plan. Satan is a thief of your time. He and the hordes of fallen angels, demons, part of their agenda is to take your time and divert it onto terrible things. Be not, says the Apostle Paul in this very passage, like children. Well, we go back to chapter 4 and up here in verse 14, that we henceforth be no more children, tossed to and fro and carried about. You know what children are with time. Children are timeless. Time doesn't matter to children. You, the parents, come on, it's time for this, it's time for this, it's time for this. It's natural for children to let time be frittered away, careless, unconscious of it. That we henceforth be no more children. Have we been children with time, with the Lord's time that He's given us, and just let it be diverted and consumed and taken away? No, buy it back, but it costs. And then the purchase time has to be applied. Time for consolation of others, time for fellowship because they need it, the other person, and I need it too. Time for the reading of the scripture, time for prayer and intercession, time for reflection on what God means to me and what he's done for me and what I owe to him and what I could be doing and should be doing for him. Time for reflection, time for these precious things. Maturity sets aims and goals. That's the exhortation of the passage, not as children, but as wise, as mature people. Mature people, by the way, don't go off at a tangent after silly things. It's always a problem in Christian circles. It's always a minority of Christians at some time in their lives go off at a tangent and chase after some ism or some fad or some specialty of their own. And why? It incurs pride. The devil says to them, only you are thinking about this. Only you have studied this. Only you are concerned about this. And they have a little ism or extremism or drum that they bang of their very own. And then after a while it'll change to something else. What a loss of time that can be. If you've got an imagination and the devil comes to you and says, people generally in the church are not thinking about this, and it's an ism. It's an irrelevant thing. But he wants to make it big to you and all-consuming. Watch out for that snare. That's another great time waster that can carry some people away. And I've known some Christians down the years, and most of their Christian lives have been taken up with speciality isms rather than the service of the Lord and the pursuit of him and knowledge of him and worship and godliness and working in the team of the church. So I mentioned that this time is brought back progressively, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Wherefore be ye not unwise, but understanding what the will of the Lord is. You think of a man like Hudson Taylor, so long ago, in the 19th century, the great missionary to China, and he started off as a medical student, but he became a Christian and a missionary in his case. And when he was a youngster, still 19, 20, you read of him perhaps going to extremes in some ways, restricting his diet, taking himself in hand, subjecting himself to all kinds of rigorous disciplines. Why? Because by the call of God, his mind was set on China, where he would be deprived, where he would be poorly supported, where he would have to go without, where he would probably run into a great deal of persecution and trouble. And he wished to prepare for that, not only by prayer and knowledge, but also by hardening himself up, by learning to cope with a restricted diet for long periods, by all kinds of things. He was determined. This is what we need to buy back time. We don't have to necessarily, I'm not calling you to a restricted diet or any such thing, but you have to be determined and resolute about this. You have to go into a new year, I am going to mortify things that I waste time on. I'm going to plan my time. I'm going to examine myself every day. I'm going to get back all the time that Satan is stealing from me and the world. and unnecessary things. And this is my plan. I'm going to read and worship and pray and reflect and do good works, and I'm going to witness, and I'm going to seek Christian service, and I'm going to reorder my time. Dear friends, the Apostle Paul says that we have to do these things because now it is high time, and our salvation, that he means by that, our final deliverance, is nearer than when we first believed. This may be our last year. This may be the last year for all of us. Who knows? Or it may be the last year for me, or for you even. Who knows? Christ has redeemed us. He sacrificed himself for our deliverance. Now you're called to the much, much smaller sacrifice, the giving up the things that misuse your time and waste it and put you at risk, the sacrificing, the self-denying of all the junk, so that you may truly live for him. Redeeming the time, buying it back by his help, by his grace. That's the word, the exhortation of the Apostle Paul for the turn of the year.